Hello, my children, and welcome to the Church of Pentan. May the cores be our savior. I'm Espira, your head of service, and joined with me is my apostle, Cosmic. John will not be joining us today as he did have some work engagements. Nevertheless, we will be trying to hold it down today. And Cos, how are you doing on this wonderful day?
Doing pretty good. Just excited. We finally got spoiler season started, even if it's off to a slow start, but hopefully good things soon.
Yeah, I think we'll probably talk about that later on, just because there's first off, new cards always great, always exciting, especially with like how impactful we think the starter deck is going to be. So that started off the conversations like incredibly strong. But it's been an interesting reveal season, and at this point, it's just kind of wondering like where it's all going to go. So we're going to see there. First, we're going to jump into Glasgow, talk about that Grand Open. We've gotten information about the Pro Tour as well before the end of last week. And then we'll be jumping into the reveals after guess that flavor text. But to kick it off, we did have another Grand Open in Glasgow, United Kingdom. And Cosmic, where do you think the United Kingdom Glasgow champion hails from?
Yeah, that's we gotta give it back to the American invasion taking another one, I guess. But yeah, gotta give a special shout out to Alex Blandon taking it down. And just at the time of recording this, he actually just booked his flight and is off to the Australian one, right? The Melbourne that's happening this weekend. So maybe he'll win 2 back to back, right? That would be absolutely insane. But hey, if pterosaurs are good, true duelists are going to show up with it and put up some good numbers.
Yeah, I think Alex will end up having a win in every international region before having a North American win, which I think is really funny. So we'll see how that all plays out.
Appreciate the dedication, right, to all the traveling and whatnot. But
yeah, honestly, especially since like he'll go home, spend a day home being like, oh, I don't know when the next one will be. And then you'll just have a book flight for the next one. So, I mean, hey, if I could do it, if I could pull it off, I'd probably be doing the same thing. So, but yeah, so in terms of top cut, well, top 8, nothing crazy at all. Top 8 was half Axe Spider field, and then the other half of the pie was split between purple and red, of which it was like Pterosaur, and then at least to purple's credit, it was like a mid-range deck and then a Curse Dragon combo deck, which is really funny because like if you would hear Ayumu talking in Discord, he's like, I'm never playing that card again.
Yeah. God, Nemesis definitely being the big pickup here, and it's one that with Lamorak obviously got a lot of set too, but it was really nice to see just like traditional core control, because I think there's been some step away with that with how the meta has evolved. Obviously not that great into Axe Spider, but with honestly how White has been changing up some of its lists, and again, depending on how the meta might shake up, looking to the Pro Tour, like Curse combo might actually just be really playable again. So we'll see how the purple players adopt in the following weeks, but at least some variation in the purple list that popped up.
Yeah, I think it's like weird because like, yes, it doesn't do anything into Axe Biter itself, but Axe Biter is like the least relevant part of the list. Like, yes, he's annoying and he's like essentially what enables you to have copies, 5 through however many ice shields, because you can just kind of like infinite block if you time with like Infinity Shield or Suppression. But at the end of the day, what really gets you are the Derm Dinos. It's the Aegis being able to attack, it's the Elephant being able to attack, and on that front, for the most part, Curse combo clears with big boards. So I actually don't necessarily hate it for that notion, especially if you combo it with the additional top end of like Maduke or whatever to then be able to close out the games with the Axe Spider still being on the board. I think that's kind of like that mashup can kind of do something. I mean, heck, we saw a Novelist that just decided to slap Maduke in and just call it a day among like all the other things it was doing. So,
And I think that's a lot of where set 3 is going to, take us into, right? With set 1, we did see a lot of, fair battle spirits being played, I guess is what you would call it. And with set 2, we did see much of, okay, we have to do the unblockable spot because White is going to be like able to hold down the fort. A lot of jokers have made a lot of main deck and side deck cards, right? Just getting to these alternate and being kind of looser with the word of it, right? It's not just, hey, my normal guy can swing and get through. Unless you're playing green, right? Then you have Thorn Prison and the new Tokiwa to look forward to. But I'm fully expecting a lot more unblockable. We have a technically life burn card in the lore set. And then with blue right around the corner, also Mill. So I think we are going to see a lot of these like different ways to win finally come online to its full power with set 3. And then set 4 probably is when the first real set that all the colors are getting equal support, which is when the meta will finally round out. So I'm really excited to see if the red, purple, and more recently white meta can get broken up here within the following lore set and then set 3 properly.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing you were saying is the fact that like all these sets have kind of been build-up sets, right? Like because we're introducing new colors, there's certain considerations that the developers need to make about not overshadowing the bringing of the new color. Also, the new color needs to be powerful enough to compensate for the fact that the card pool is in green's case half as dense as the other colors when it's coming in, and then blue's case 2/3 less amount of cards, right? So those are just the additional kinds of things I need to consider. So that's why for me, set 4, like, don't get me wrong, we're getting set 3, and I'm very excited to see kind of like what that brings together and everything. But I feel like set 4, like you were saying, is really where like, okay, now we have all the colors, they're all introduced, they all have a baseline. Now we can really kind of see how the blending, right? Because I think we've gotten ideas of like, hey, yellow's bad into like red and purple, but is extremely good into white and stuff like that. And I think the dynamics of the strengths and weaknesses of all the colors are something that we're going to see so much more with all the colors being around, and then the sets being focused around how they all play with each other as opposed to trying to like highlight a certain set of colors.
Yeah, that's been the interesting thing too, right? Because we talk about how much red and purple, yellow is good into white. Like that, even right now with Axe Spider and everything that's going on, you can build a yellow deck that's going to be white. And then the other good matchup for yellow is supposed to be blue, which again isn't here yet. So it'll be really interesting to see. Your bad matchups are going to be traditionally red and purple. Your good matchups are traditionally going to be white and blue. Green, you're like, okay, we're both doing our own thing. So it'll be interesting to see. And then every color has a dynamic like that. So hopefully that's when we start to see the meta really shine in the 6 different colors kind of having equal representation. But red and purple just started off strong right out of the gate and had favorable color matchups, to be fair, like for the first couple sets. So fingers crossed for set 3.
Yeah, and with that said, looking into the deck lists, nothing too crazy in the top 8. I think one of the Axe Spider decks was a Turbo Rex deck, which good on them. I mean, Turbo Rex can do a lot of great things against Axe Spider specifically. It hedges you against a lot of like your really bad matchups like Elk and stuff like that. So, in terms of the Blandon list, if you guys want to know the changes to like Pterosaur, nothing really. I think the big changes, they got rid of Sortosaurus and upped their Eagles and Giganos back to 4 copies each. And I think there might be a little bit of like a mix up in the sideboard, but nothing too crazy really on their deck. Here I'm looking at one of the Axe Spider decks, and again, very similar to what we're seeing with the list from Caleb. I think a lot of lists are very similar. They're very much mech beast based at this point, just because you have such a density of mech beasts that it's actually worth running 3-4 Nomengard cities. You're running Aegis. Now we're looking to running Elk mainboard and stuff like that. Here we've got the Turbo Rex mainboard instead, so a lot of those cards that kind of lend itself well to more being a white core, and then you're just splashing the other colors for card advantage or removal. And then if you break away from top 8, though, you get the things that are slightly more interesting. Like here we have Michael Lang's list, which is like what is it, yellow luster or yellow?
Fabled Beast Luster. So this is an interesting one. I have to give them a shout out in particular because during the last, I believe it was Germany's Grand Open or somewhere in season 1, they bubbled out there as well. So they got 10th place at that event, 9th place in this one, bubbling out again. So they have to, just how the world works, they have to get a top 8 finish in the next Grand Open that they play in. And this is true to just, I think there is very much a consideration where other colors are underplayed. Don't get me wrong. I definitely feel that, Rex and Axe are going to be the 2 best decks in the format. A lot of people will just, shortcut to say it's a 2-deck format. There's a lot of truth to that, but Battle Spirits as a game also rewards people for just sticking to a color and just really grinding out the games. And this list in particular is a huge kudos to them for, again, sticking it out, evolving the list, playing through the matchups, and to come so close twice on a archetype that a lot of people have honestly forgotten, right, to be fair, or written off, I think is tremendous kudos to be given. Now, again, the one thing I will say, and I know everyone that plays yellow can agree with, yes, it's still the Fabled Beast package that's kind of underlying it and holding it together because the rest of Luster is kind of not great. But Michaela and Shin just do some amazing things that I definitely think are worth trying out in more lists. And also with the new 6-drop Angel that we just got spoiled, like I'm way more excited to play Luster now and try to figure out how we can get those high roll payoffs and just neg an entire board by 10k off 2 spells. Yes, please.
Yeah, that looks super exciting. I like where Yellow's actually going to go with some of the new tools that it gotten, especially since it allows you to kind of open up and not just play a Fabled Beast. But I guess there's a couple of inclusions here that I think are odd. I think, not maxing on Cathedral is a little bit questionable. I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm a believer of Crocodile. There's just something about this card. If it's the stat line, if it's requiring the Soul Core, I just don't know that I'm a believer in this card, even if it's a Fabled Beast that can gain you a life sometimes. But
yeah, I ended up cutting it from my list too, just because it had that 3K problem. So yes, it's super greedy for the Soul Core. You need to have your other Nexus come online to get it to a good BP threshold. So maybe a one or a two of, just because it is another Fable Beast and it's going to draw you a card. But the other Nexus that we really do got to give a shout out to, though, is the Secret Flower Garden, I believe is the name of it off the top of my head. That is the plus 1K for Blessed and Luster, because in this kind of hybrid style of deck, it does help your spirits get above that 6K threshold that you're often getting threatened by red. So it does help up against the dual eagles and trying to connect. So I really did like that. And then, of course, if they ever answer it, you just heal one, right? So that was a really interesting tech, and one that I think that with set 3, assuming that we don't get a full-on Luster deck, I'd like to say that we will, but probably not, because we got the aggro Luster stuff, but just doesn't fit when Bless is just better. So I think Secret Flower Garden is one we're going to be seeing a lot more of in some of these lists popping up as just a 2 of, because it can be so good against the volcanic breaks of the world when red is still everywhere.
Yeah, 100%. I think the beauty with Yellow that I think is just it's. So I was talking about this last week or the week before, where when I was talking about the card pool, and I was just saying it's kind of crazy that purple isn't tier 0 in my opinion, because every time I feel like I have a problem I need to solve in the game, purple kind of just feels like that color, right? That can help with my draws or help me with my removal or XYZ. The only thing it really doesn't do is kind of Nexus interaction. And yellow is very much in a world of starting to fill up a similar space where it's I have a problem and there's these very specific yellow cards that kind of help me with what I'm getting there. There's that one Nexus, I think it's a Birdfolk Nexus, that prevents your course from being removed from purple. So there's these weird glimmers of cards that I feel have this great usage where it's it just really kind of needs the core to come together. Fabled Beast has been that core for a while now, but I think the tools are really building for the color to really flesh out. And I think we just kind of need a little bit of a pressure valve on the format right now that's very centralized around kind of what red and purple are doing, and then white based around Axe Spider, to kind of really let the color shine. So I still think there's definitely legs there.
Yeah, I'm curious to see because we know there's going to be another Fabled Beast X-Rare within set 3, and I'm curious to see where that ends up. But based on Harpy Palace Nest, or Harpy Nest Palace, whichever it is, and how the Birdfolk want to align, it's almost crazy to say, but I think yellow will actually be good when Fabled Beast is no longer the core that everyone's relying on. Paradise is really, really strong, but there are the high end of Luster is just so much better, right? So if we somehow find a way to get off that crutch and push Michaela into where the spotlight that it needs to be in, that could be really good. And yeah, Harpy Nest Palace, making stuff level 1 is insanely good. If we go back to that Rainbow Nemesis build, gotta give another shout out to Bryce, right? He was playing a really sick yellow purple list, and Raphael, yeah, the first 2 effects just kind of suck. They never happened. They're not good value engines, too hard to get off, whatever. But forcing anything to be level 1 when you're either blocked by if you have this Nexus in play, or removing cores, which works offensively and defensively, shrinking things down level 1 when nothing has armor yellow is extremely valuable and lets you line up your removal more effectively, as well as just letting your yellow spirits attack through sometimes, which can be really important. So there's always, as you mentioned, key pieces that are spread out and not in Fabled Beast, namely, that just need a little bit more of a push. And I feel like we might actually get to see something with them.
Yeah, I think you're very much on the right path in terms of the yellow ceiling is incredible when you talk about Michaela and things like that. I think what Fabled Beast provides is the floor, right? Fabled Beast, no matter what, you're always going to be able to draw some cards. You're always going to be able to have stuff on the board. So then if you do end up having Cathedral proc, you can slowly rotate. So I think it's very much just yellow's floor that kind of needs to be corrected. And part of that just kind of has to do with the fact that we've been in the world of red and purple, and those are just extremely favored against that, and that just kind of lends itself into what it is. But I think I agree that once the floor moves away from having to just need to run Fabled Beast to account for the early game, you just kind of need to make your late game even be relevant at all. I think that it generally feels like that's kind of when yellow is going to be in a place where we're going to be able to see it consistently, at least be in the top cut brackets.
Yeah, as we mentioned with like those auto builds, right? When you think about yellow, it's okay, 4 Paradise, 4 Dual Eagle, 4 Hippo at a bare minimum for your yellow floor. And it's just like, all right, that's what I'm starting with. So we'd love some more flexibility at some point there.
Yeah, so hopefully that'll come through. I mean, reveal season's still happening, so love to see kind of what happens, especially if yellow is a little bit favored into blue, and blue is looking to at least be a playable spicy color. Then kind of see how it lines up there. The last real feature deck to talk about is this red pile. This was run by, I believe, a Hong Kong player. My apologies for this name I'm about to butcher, but Chinok Enoch Lau. And it's essentially I don't even know if I want to call it a Nova deck, because it runs 3 Novas, but I mean, and it runs like a red early game, so you got Flamefish and Dragon Arcs. Like, there's no shot you're losing to aggro, right? Just because you have so much main board. And then you're running your typical things like Andromeda and your Burning Forces at 3 to account for the fact that you already have 2 Andromedas. You're running a lot of draw power. So very reminiscent of what Nova lists have looked like before. But then the top end is just everything. It's like, what's really good against Axe? Elk. You know what's really good against Axe? Maduke. Yo, you know what's sick? Enterprise. And it's just like, throw all the different top ends into this deck and just call it a day to run it through. And I think, if anything, I like where it's coming from the idea of like, I will never die to aggro because I run the best early game aggro cards. I'm not dying to the late game because I have the best late game. I feel like a good mid-range deck could really abuse this matchup. But like, hey, at the end of the day, this deck kind of just saying I'm going to take both extremes of the meta, account for both of them, and I should be fine. And I think this meta is so greedy that you can probably actually just get there.
Yeah, the one thing that I really, and I know they're going to say it's because you want to be defensive, you don't want to ramp your opponent cores and whatnot, but the Emirate Man versus Worker Ant-Man really just like stuck me in the side, because with how heavy your top end is, and yes, you still do have the Big Bang energy, let's get the Nova combo and all that stuff, but like, you will take any extra cores you get. And in that regard, it's kind of like, yeah, Nova is a ramp card because you're going to take a bunch of life, do your combo, and then heal back up to 5. But at the same time, like, just give me the Worker Ant-Man so I can more reliably stick these Madukes. Like, Maduke is super core hungry, right? Like, that's another big thing to consider with her. So, like, having the Maduke, having the Enterprise, and being off color for both of these, it's going to take a while to set that up and have enough cores to do everything. But I think the heal is just super, super awesome. And it's nice to see, because we talked about this earlier on too, outside of this podcast, but for a red-green just kind of like ramp mid-range strategy that can play into these big boss monsters, I think you still want to play Nova just for the heal, right? There's going to be some games where you have Worker Ant-Man early, it gets you some cores, but then you stumble a little bit, take some life. Well, boom, there's Nova coming in, healing you back to 5, answering the board, and suddenly you reset it so that you can establish your late game. So I definitely love this idea. I want to see more of this explored out once we get more spoilers. Obviously, like, red white has been a big combo that's appearing in Japanese Battle Spirits right now, so I really want to see if we can get like a red white splash green kind of engine going and seeing where the spoilers might end up for set 3.
Yeah, 100%. I think for what's worth, I love deck building like this. It's just like, hey, let's throw it together, right? Like, my first grand open was like a red, yellow, like running just white, like just running a bunch of things, right? So I'm a big believer in this. I am of the opinion that this is kind of a pile, but hey, it got him 10th place. Who am I to judge whatever people are playing, right? Like, what do I know?
It won 5 rounds. I mean, you gotta give props to that.
Yeah, 100%. So, of course, that was everything there. If you guys ever want the full breakdown of the top cut, you guys can actually just go on Eggman Events or check out Cause's breakdown on YouTube, and there'll be more fleshed out details there about the decks that we saw this week at this event. And then upcoming is Australia this weekend, right? So OCE turnout doesn't look incredibly big so far. I think there's some odd like 30 or 40 signed up at the moment. So hopefully those will tie more in as we lead into the end of the week. But with all these grand opens coming and going, we do now jump into the announcements for season 3, which is very exciting for what it's worth. This is relatively early in regards to kind of when we're getting dates and data and all that kind of stuff for set 3 or season 3 or wave 3 or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but I can't say I'm exactly thrilled with kind of how everything it landed. So I'm going to check the Battle Spirits website just to double check and make sure that all my event dates are right. But essentially, the way that's playing out is that you have kind of like this really offloaded, like front-loaded event cycle where you have the Netherlands Grand Open, you have Pasadena. So that's happening the week after the Pro Tour. Then you have Pasadena happening the week after that. I think Chile is happening within those same 2 weeks. I think Australia is having one that's happening within those same 2 weeks. So in terms of the regions that only have one, those are all over, and then the regions that have 2 events will already have one locked in after right after the Pro Tour, which that's fine. I don't necessarily have an issue with like us going from Pro Tour into like jumping right into the next season, especially since I think people are excited about set 3 and want to be jumping into more into that. So to that end, I think I'm very excited. I think it's the latter half that leaves a lot to be desired. So the way that things have lined up, I think the way that it plays out is that the 3rd Pro Tour is happening in December, and I think it's the weekend of the 16th. So literally like the weekend before Christmas. Which fine, like these things happen. Is it the best? No, because people want to save their dates for the holidays and whatever, but like end of year, it is what it is. I think my biggest issues lie with the fact that Atlanta, which is hosted by PPG, has a grand open, and that's happening the weekend before. So that's happening on the 9th and the 8th. So now it's like, okay, so you have a week to get your invite and then figure out if once you've got it, if you want to pay the money of whatever the flight is to go to Pasadena, which is one coast to another coast, or you could just book your flight ahead of time. Because realistically, I think if you attend the Grand Open, you're probably going to have a good chance for your invite, but who knows? You have like you're going to have 2-3 days of like people confirming their invite, or else it goes to the pass down based on the way Play did it in the first season. So like already that I think is unfortunately incredibly disrespectful to the player base. I think that's not allocating enough time for people to figure things out. I think it's very disorganized on Bandai TO sides, whoever needs to manage this. And then beyond that, you have the German Grand Open, I think, at DreamHack, and that's happening on the weekend of the Pro Tour. So like, guess what? You are European and you're only able to go to the 2nd Grand Open and like actually wanted to go to Pasadena. Well, good luck, because unless you've magically invented teleportation in the span of the next 3 months, it's impossible.
Yeah, it leaves a lot to be desired. And I know a lot of other games will, take this time as a break, right? All things considered, because when you look at November, December, realistically, you're losing 2 to 3 weeks out of it, especially when you think about Thanksgiving, Christmas, into New Year's, right? You're basically losing a month off the bat. So you're trying to cram in all these events. And again, the main reason why they're doing it, of course, is to look forward to Worlds, and because we're going to have the next major event right after in January. But and again, I got to, Espira mentioned earlier on, I got to give them the same credit. I love that we're getting these dates super early. I want to see more of that, giving players a lot of time to travel. That's super great. The scheduling just sucked for where these landed, and is super unfair to players. So it's great for those of us that are on the East Coast, and it's super cheap and super easy to get to Atlanta for a lot of people, like, especially if you're coming out of the hub. But then to go, as the Spirit mentioned, right to the other coast where it's going to be like a $500 flight or something ridiculous, the very next week is going to be rough. And especially for people, if you're not like full-time, salary and all that stuff, that is a lot of travel costs in a 2-week window that sure, you can win a lot of money. That'd be great, especially if you spike it. And then you have to wait 30 days to get paid out for it. So it's again, one of those things. It's like one step forward, love the scheduling and whatnot, and then like 3 steps back for how everything just kind of played out. But at least Worlds will be exciting, or so we hope.
Yeah, I'm on a position of like thinking World's gonna be very exciting. It's just very tough when like here's the thing. This is happening to Europeans for a North American Pro Tour. I don't know how upset I should be. I know I am upset. I woke up very upset when I woke up to that news, to a point where it took me away from the reveals for a minute. But it's like at the same time, I am not European. This doesn't necessarily impact me. I care because I care about the community and I care about those that it will impact. But at the end of the day, if the Europeans don't care because they weren't going to go anyways, sure, then like there's only so much hubbub I can make about this. But at the end of the day, it's still like it's either just complete miscommunication internally from Bandai and their TOs, or it's them giving up on the structure of this Pro Tour system in year 1, which is just like something has to be communicated here. The fact that it just happens and it's just like, you guys want to tell us what's going on? Like, I think I'm just not in love with the way that it all played out. I understand. And like, here's the thing. I feel for TOs. I understand that getting venues is hard. I know that you're competing with like costs and stuff like that. And like, there are whole discussions and reasons as to why like every Battle Spirits event is at One Piece events now, right? Like we share space because like One Piece makes money and that allows us to actually be able to host events and stuff like that. So I understand that there's complications in regards to that, but and big companies, silos, big respect to all of that. I understand all that. But I find it truly, especially like when you're talking about regions like Europe, like Latin America, that have felt like they are, playing like second favorite to North America, let's say, or so I just don't think it bodes well when those communities and regions feel the most disenfranchised, and then they're the ones that end up getting like the butt end of the stick when it comes to situations like this. It doesn't sit well with me. I tend to be a harbinger for the people more than anything else, and maybe to my detriment because like I get more angry about these things than they do. But it's just I don't love how it's happened. I love that it's been set ahead of time. At least players will be able to plan around it, and at least players know, so that if they do plan on going into the Pro Tour, not great that they don't really have a choice, but at least Europeans know that the first Grand Open is the one that they'll want to go to if their attendance in LA is kind of where they want to be for the end of the year before they close out and jump us over into Worlds. So it's a weird balance. Like you said, one step back, 2-3 steps backward, or one step ahead, 2-3 step backwards sometimes. But hey, we'll take the movement at the very least, and hopefully next time it'll be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and at least we still made progression. So we'll take that where we can get it.
Yeah, we are very much overdue for a roadmap of sorts at this point, which could help alleviate a little bit of this, even if it's unfortunate now. But I think we're probably still a good 2 months away before we see a real roadmap coming out of what does year 2 look like? How is the structure changing? If it's changing, prize pool considerations, right? There's a lot of big questions that we have as a community looking for the next year, because we know in the roadmap that was originally released, the I guess what you would call year 2 wave 1 starts in February, like literally starts right after Worlds, it feels like. So that'll be interesting to see where it lands.
Yeah, I love roadmaps. I think MTG and like Pokemon, well, Pokemon not as much, but still they do like a whole like here's organized play for the entire year, right? Yep. And they're really good about it. They're like, these are the dates. Whereas like MTG is a little bit more vague because they need to find venues or whatever like that. But I truly appreciate the notion of like, even if you can't give me hard dates, here's what the year's going to look like. Not only are here the dates for your tournaments so that you can kind of book way ahead of time if you want to, but here's like here's what product is going to look like in Magic's case for like the next 2 years, right? And even the stuff they haven't settled on, it's like this is set spaghetti, right? And it's like at the very least you kind of have an idea roughly of like what the plan is, what the structure, and at least it kind of gives us an understanding of what the vision is. And I think that's a little bit more core when you're dealing with like a card game that's not based around an IP. Because when you're doing around an IP game, like everything's already played out, right? Like if I'm playing a Dragon Ball Super card game, I know that there's going to be a set based on GT, and then a set based on the Frieza arc, and the Saiyan arc, and the this arc, right? Like it's already kind of all laid out. And if I appreciate like whatever the beats of the IP and kind of the whole ecosystem around that, then I can kind of get my own ideas of where they're going to go based on like releases of the show and whatever, right? Like the One Piece card game just got like promos that kind of align with the live action, and I could have probably got an idea that that's kind of where they were going if I was in tune with that specific game because I tracked that IP. And that's just kind of like the overall ecosystem is just kind of where I think Battle Spirits needs to shift, and probably what we'll see going into year 2. I know they've gotten a ton of feedback in that regard. So I think those are kind of the couple of strides that we kind of need to make to at least build up player confidence when things like these occur. So,
yeah, or even consider that maybe 6 months plus 2 weeks, right? We should see our first major mechanic in set 5, and that could be Braves, that could be something else, right? Like it doesn't have to be the full details of like what to expect and whatnot, but it'd be really cool to say, hey, here's where set 4 is going to be the double symbols, and then in set 5, boom, brand new mechanic. Well, new if you know Battle Spirits Japan, right? You know what it is, but something to like kick off that big year 2 kind of competitive cycle, and also new block cycle would be really exciting. So fingers crossed we can just get some kind of roadmap. Again, probably a couple months away yet, but hopefully soon TM we can get one.
Yeah, soon TM, one of my favorite things in all of TCG space. Oh God. So with that said, that is kind of the generals of what happened with the Grand Opens, the Pro Tour news. I mean, for those who don't know, myself, Cause, and many other North Americans are actually going to be attending lots of events going into the next month. When we go into the Pro Tour, there's going to be a Grand Open. So some of us are doing like Pro Tour Grand Open, going from the Netherlands, chilling out somewhere else, and then going back to the Netherlands, and then Pasadena. Some of us are just going to do the whole European thing. So there's going to be a lot of events. So if you guys are going to the events, please say hi. I mean, we'd love to. We're definitely gonna chat that up and kind of get better idea of where we're going to be when as the days get closer. But definitely something that we're all super looking forward to and very excited to be a part of. So, with that said, we are jumping into everyone's favorite segment of the show. Guess that flavor text. Now, I do know that last week I said, hey, cause I kind of goofed up and you weren't able to guess, and I gave you a point and all that. And, shout outs to Tada for guessing a card I never thought he would guess. But since Tada's not actually here, we actually will start you off with a baseline of 0 again, because you get a shot at being able to guess the flavor text that he doesn't. So why not? Hey, I think this is a really great way to equalize things that aren't necessarily just like, hey, here's a point. So for our viewers at home, the way that this plays out is that I will be providing a flavor text for Cause. He can then try to guess what the card is based on that flavor text. And if he cannot guess it, I will provide him hints. He gets 2 different hints, one of which is the cost of the card, and the other is its typing. Each of those will be removing 1 of potential 3 points away from them if he will need them. With that said, Cause, are you ready to jump into today's Guess That Flavor text?
Best we can.
All right. So, left to face the Voidlord threat alone after the aristocrats fled, the Realm of Gloom's denizens readily switched sides.
And this is the thing, I've been so excited about set 3 lore and reading all that flavor text. I keep telling myself I'm going to get back to set 2, but I haven't yet. So
yeah, I was this close from choosing a set 3 card, and then I was like, wait, Cosmic's been reading every single card for the past 3 days. There's no shot he's not going to guess which one I pull.
But yeah, so this one's definitely going to be out of purple. And it's set 2 because we know about the Void Lords. Well, I guess it's set 3 does actually mention Void Lords because going through blue, they're doing like a catch up to that story. So less, non 0% chance, but I'm definitely going to go with this one being set 2 after the aristocrats fled. So that has to do with like their ranks and stuff. But I'm definitely going to need a hint off of this one just to start it off. I mean, I can tell you it's purple. We know that much, but
yeah. So your hint is that it is a 3 cost.
The flavor text is too short, so it's not a vanilla either.
I know. That's how you know.
There is some shorter ones in set 3, but generally for set 2, all the longer flavor texts were for vanilla cards exclusively. But no, like as someone who doesn't play a lot of purple, I am drawing a blank. I don't know what it is off of 3. What is the family type?
The family type is undead.
God, that definitely doesn't narrow it down. Because undead got a major archetype support in set 2. Funny enough, with Undead Mausoleum and things like that let you draw a card. So again, random card that probably people have forgotten about already. That's still in the back of my mind rotting away. The skeleton is a 2-drop. Or no, the skeleton gets back a 2-drop. Is it Grafdigger Skeleton or whatever his name is?
Is that your final answer?
That's gonna have to be my final answer because I can't think of another 3-drop. Because I think it's a 3-drop that gets a 2-drop back.
All right, that is correct. Gravedigger Skeleton.
Yeah, Gravedigger, close enough. All right, let's go.
Yeah, I was feeling iffy on that one because I know it was a card you were pretty hyped on when it was first revealed. Because like this is one of those cards that can potentially enable whole new ways to play the game. So huge congrats there. 3 cost, 1 purple reduction. Gravedigger Skeleton is an undead. At level 1, it's a 1k. Level 2, it's a 4k. On levels 1 and 2, when summoned, you may select the spirit, cost that card 2 or fewer from your trash, and summon it exhausted.
Yeah, Ryan's gonna bully me about this one because he's actually been playing this card in a really sick yellow purple list and just beating my butt with it. Because I also realize it's not just 2 costs, it's 2 or fewer. So like loop back those elementals for free and whatnot. I'm like, oh, this actually does more than I thought it did. And spoiler, we actually got some really nice 2-drops with set 3 spoiled so far. So this might even, get some more room to grow in set 3.
So you're saying I can crash my zeros into my opponent, and then I can Gravedigger Skeleton them back, crash both of those into my opponent, and then I can K, and then get everything back into my hand? I mean, we are getting the lore set next week, so...
The infinite value deck is real, man.
I do know that like yellow purple is kind of like a thing that we've been talking about for a minute now, on and off, whether it was the Discords and some people have been bringing it up, just because like there's a lot of value engine there, especially with kind of like that synergy that purple and blue have of like, hey, we kind of care about bringing things back, we care about kind of like what's in your trash and kind of how that plays around. So I'm decently excited to see kind of how that goes, especially in set 3. We did end up getting what is this, Cross Stitcher or whatever she's called? I can't remember her name. But she's like a mini nemesis that kind of plays really well into those strategies. Makes it very exciting.
Yeah, definitely for the aristocrat style. Nemesis obviously got a lot of love with shadows in general, so I think there's still like, hey, there's the mono purple self-sacrifice for value engine. Sure, that's all fine, but yellow purple with just like getting all the blessed cathedral triggers, ramping even more cores, drawing more cards. Like the blessed cathedral is just insane in yellow purple. Like
That's a good card.
it's very very good.
Yeah, it's like we've been complaining about depths for a hot minute now, but then like when like Cathedral gets to pop off, you're like, this card's crazy. Oh, so with that said, we are going to be jumping into reveal discussions because we did get reveals, lots of reveals actually. Cosmic was right on this one where I was like, I feel like reveals might again be kind of like the slow roll that they've been doing for the past little while, but no, we got the entirety of the starter deck in one go. Big fan of that. And then we've just kind of been culling and getting entire colors, except X rares. I don't know what they're doing with these X rares. I don't know where you're all hiding them. Get them out of the closet. I want to start seeing some X rares. But either way, we've been getting, for the most part, kind of like fully fleshed out components of a lot of the colors. One question kind of to me before we really jump into that. What happened to the numbering of like yellow and white? Like, because
It
my
changed with the
theory,
lore set, and no idea why.
yeah, my theory was initially that like, hey, maybe now that all the colors are out in the game, they're going into original JP numbering system to kind of align us there. But no, because apparently, according to Yumu, when I was talking about it, we'd be in green then. So like,
Yep.
it's just I'm very confused as to what happened there, why that happened there. Not that it really changes much, but kind of threw a wrench into how I thought reveals were going to work this season. So little bit
Just,
there.
just yellow and white getting flipped, I guess. So we got the white so far, so more white tomorrow, and then should go into green because they're surely going to do blue at the end.
Mm-hmm. So, for the uninitiated, Aquatic Invaders is the set coming out on October 27th, same weekend as the Pro Tour. And a big thing of note there is that blue is coming in, which is very exciting. Also, if you guys want to see the trailer, the trailer is also available. It's pretty neat, actually. We see a couple of waifus in there, which I'm very excited to kind of see make their way into the card game. And we did get the entirety of the starter deck, which to me is very exciting, but also leaves me very like hopes and dreams about kind of like where this is going, because it's mill and I absolutely love mill strategies. I think they're easily my favorite of the bunch, but and I'll actually bring up one of the cards here, kind of like get the discussion going. It's one of those things where it's tied to attacking into your opponent, so this is a very tricky place where if you're not milling enough via a mechanic that forces you to interact with your opponent via attacking, then your alternate win con kind of never really gets online, and we're actually just killing our opponents or unaliving our opponents. My apologies. Versus actually doing the thing that we're trying to do, which is mill them out. Now, I do think there's a bonus that like if the game ever goes long, you are favored in kind of like the late game because you have this alternate win con that's kind of kicking in. But I do think it's a little bit tough to, being as someone who wants to lean into the mill aspects of these kinds of decks, to not, at least at the moment, have a way to really kind of feel like the mill is a win con I'm gunning for.
Yeah, a lot of the times when I was proxying, and for those that don't know, I did get a chance to proxy up the starter deck plus the main set reveals. And a lot of times, like if you take the spoilers we have today, you build a deck, throw it together, you're like, wow, mill really sucks, but raid is super cool. And it's like, I don't, and again, I think I want a single game based off mill out of all the games I've played, but you get to see all these other cool, like heavy control aspects of blue kind of come online. But it really does feel like if mill is meant to be like a consideration, I'm actually going to have that as the win con and not just like, oh, if I don't aggro you out early on and just kill you that way, the game went long enough and then I got there for mill, right? Like you want to make the design of it to be achievable and have some kind of consistency base to it, right? The big question comes back to at what turn does mill you out, right? Let people do their consistent thing, but also make sure that it's long enough where you still have to attack your opponent. They still are forced to interact with you. And a lot of these spirits you'll find out are very weak. And we do have the starter deck that gives like, plus 1K to crush. That's not enough and probably won't see play in the grand scheme of things other than a sideboard. So I know people are going to like have a knee-jerk reaction to when I'm saying this, and it's not going to make sense until you play the deck out itself. We literally need a boss spirit or key spirit that mills 15. Like we need Castle Golem to be a thing in this set. or Mill's not going to get there. There's no shot that Mill holds up unless it gets a equally strong. Because remember, Castle Golem, as printed, is balanced for a 40 card main deck, and Battle Spirit Saga is balanced at a 50 card, right? And there's a gap where none of these spirits got upgraded for 40 versus 50 card deck. So even if they printed Castle Golem line for line, it would be considered nerfed for Battle Spirit Saga. So again, it's going to be like 2 weeks until we see X rares, I guess. But whenever we do, hopefully we get a good key spirit, because Nirvana is not it. I'll tell you all right now. I love that it's like Baby Crush and Baby Raid to like let you see both sides of it. But that is 100% not what you want. You want a dedicated Crush and a dedicated Raid for the two different archetypes in blue. Like, I did not enjoy playing this card. A lot of times it was just like, I'm killing you because it's a double attack. I don't care about the mill. It's a raid 1, and I got to blow something up. So we'll see. I'm excited to see where they go, but there's a lot to be desired on the mill side. But raid, love it. Absolutely love it where it's at so far.
Yeah, I agree. Raid was really cool. Or not raid, but similar raid is it Tokiwa that can become a dual attacker, right? Like it's the power of being able to swing twice is like absolutely huge. And for those who don't know, Crush is an ability that says Crush plus some modifier. When the spirit attacks, it will mill this card's level plus the modifier. So Nirvana, which is on the screen right now, if you are one of our video watchers, currently has Crush +2 on all levels. So let's say it's a level 3 and has Crush +2. When it swings, it'll mill a total of 5 cards, which is the level 3 +2. So it's I know that some people did the math and they're like, hey, if we actually have like this card plus we're running Lightning Aura to give it Confront, and then if we're running is it Canyon that allows us to be able to attack twice with like our Confront creatures and whatever. So there's a world in which you can like mill 20 cards, but like it is very convoluted, uses a lot of cards that like it's and it's that same notion of like, plus with raid, like I'm already hitting my opponent twice with potentially an 11k. Like that's not nothing. So and you know, if I'm comboing it with like, is it the, I forget what the spirit is called, but is it the 2-drop that like pops the thing whenever, yeah, I think it's this guy right here. Rammer Golem is great, where it's like when one of your blue decks is exhausted, select one of your opponent's spirits that cost 4 fewer and destroy it. So now I'm, you know, getting rid of their blockers and everything. It feels like that aspect of the deck is super cool. I'm just not entirely sure with what we've gotten so far that like mill actually gets there itself. So but from that, I mean, there's lots of exciting cards in the starter deck. Otherwise, I think, you know, like if you were running a mill card, I think more cards like Battle Beast, Bold Top. Oh my god, that's a card name. Is is a card that can kind of get you there. During your attack step, when a spirit card is discarded by your Crush effect, select one of your spirits, place a core from it. So now you're like, it's your ramp. I think Cosmic made a wonderful video on reviewing the blue star deck. I think you guys should definitely go check it out. Where you're talking like, but there's still questions on regards of like, do we just do work rant instead? And then it's like less work to kind of get the same effect. Yeah, probably. And now we're leaning even more into we're just attacking to our opponents and kind of getting them pretty close to lethal. So it's that kind of balance there. But the rest of the strategy is like, I will say that this is probably by far the strongest starter deck. Like it is. And I think it's primarily because it streamlines a certain strategy much more. Like it leans pretty heavily into the whole Crush thing. And then the additional stuff it has on the side are just good value stuff. So it's like in the same reign of like purple, where like purple just like, yeah, like the purple starter deck is like curse plus some core removal, but turns out like that doesn't need to be like an archetype to just be good things you want to do anyways. So I think in that front it's extremely good. And then Floodstream is a card that will forever change this game.
Yep. Very excited for this one in particular. And you know, still the strongest card spoiled, right? Like it's very good.
Yeah, it's a removal on flash timing. It says 5 cost, 2 blue reductions. Magic burst when you lose a life. Select a spirit during this turn. Treat it as its highest level. You may then pay this card's cost to activate flash effect. So honestly, not great, but there's a world in which I see I might actually want this, right? Like maybe I have to spend a turn being able to get a really big spirit down on one core, and then by being able to take the life, now it's actually like it's almost like pseudo acceleration. Almost, it's like a defensive acceleration. So I think that has a lot more value than some people would give credit to, because I think there are some cards this works incredibly well with. But then beyond that, it has the main and flash. Select any number of your opponent's spirits with a combined total of 5 or fewer cost and destroy them. And this is a massive ability. I mean, it's essentially, for a lot of decks, it's a board wipe at instant speed. For other decks, it's a 1-for-1 removal, but like, hey, sometimes that's just like fine. But I think this deck alone, off of like how it skews the Pterosaur matchup, completely changes how the meta looks in regards to moving forward beyond set 2.
Yeah, this is definitely our Dream Bomb 2.0, as I called my video as well, where it's like you might not main blue, like that might not be your color, but you are playing at least 2 of this and having some number in the sideboard, depending on how the meta shakes up. Like it is going to be hopefully a foil at some point in wave 3. It'd be a huge miss if it's not. So Papa Bandai, please make this foil. But it's one of those things, right? Just by it being printed is going to have such a dynamic shift in the meta that doesn't really matter what other spoilers we get from this point. Like, we know that the starter deck is going to have a forever changing impact on the meta, and it's one that's welcomed. I think a lot of people can agree set 2 fell a little bit flat, unfortunately, and just the starter deck alone, it gives us a lot, or gives everybody should give you a lot of hope about how the game is going to shift from here.
Yeah, and honestly, kudos for this being in the starter deck, right? Don't get me wrong, Dream Bomb being in the starter deck, like huge props because that was obviously a very meta impactful card, but they easily could have just made this like another Absolute Ice Shield situation, and it would have been Absolute Ice Shield, right? Like this. So I think kudos that it's easily accessible as a 4 of in one starter deck if you want it. And then you have arguably the greatest tool, or one of the greatest tools that you'll need moving into kind of the next set. So very, very, very happy about that in terms of kind of what I think, in the face of some sealed products that have had questionable value for ROI in terms of things like Elemental Spark, and Lore Set being good value, but kind of questionable on how many of the cards actually have impact. I think the blue starter deck is a great starting point for any players who might be interested to be jumping into the game. Definitely one that allows you to fiddle around with an alternative win con, which is a lot of fun, but also strategy that's very cohesive and one that you could take to an actual like locals out of the box and not feel totally miserable about, which is very nice. So very excited about that. And then we started jumping into reveals. So the reveals for the main set, like we were said beforehand, didn't actually talk about any. We didn't see any X rares. For some reason, they're holding all of them hostage. I don't know where. Let us know, Bandai, so we can send the FBI, set them free, and we can start seeing these cards. But we have gotten a lot of cards. Get it out of the way. All right, I'm gonna just get it out of the way. There's lots of vanillas in this set, guys. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, like I've already said this. I'll do like a full set review when like set 3 is fully out, and then I can talk about my spiel there again. But Lord knows it's been 3 days of me nonstop talking about vanillas. I'm not doing it again. TLDR, there's about as many vanillas in this set as there were in set 2. Take that as you will. Say what you have to say about that. Most of their stat lines aren't impressive. It is what it is. If you like reading some lore, well, you got some more books there for you.
Yeah, not much else to say about it.
Yeah, pretty much. But I do think there are some exciting cards. Like if you are a lore head, I do think this is a very exciting set. I think we're seeing like it wasn't totally clear to me in set 2, kind of like the impact that like the Void Lords had and kind of how that all shape shifted. And I think set 3 on that front closed a lot of loops in terms of like, hey, this is like what happened to all of the Void Lords and how all the different colors have kind of dealt with that. And now that we have blue in the image, and blue are trying to like reunify in their very own messed up way all of the different nations and everything. So I think it's, in terms of what the sets are doing lore wise, I think this is kind of the most excited I've been about lore, because there's just so many like what's going on now that I have a deeper understanding of all the players and all that. So interesting to see on that front. And with that, I mean, we got Darkworm. I will say, I think in terms of like the story implications, I'm kind of not loving this initial iteration of Darkworm. Like he's literally just a body with confront. And then on level 3, he buffs up all the guys, which are pretty large. I mean, I will say it's a pretty like substantial BP bump. 3k is like not nothing, so it's very real on that front. And there are a lot of Star Dragons that wish they had confront, so you can kind of build like a Star Dragon confront deck now kind of reliably, and it probably works better than the dinosaur confront deck, if I'm being totally honest. So I mean, that's fine, but I don't love that this is the first. Like Darkworm seems like such a dunk for like an XR in my opinion. Like if you're really going to introduce him into the game at this point.
Yeah, do love the artwork though, and again to that point, it's Star Dragons has this theme stuck with it where you have Nova at the top end who is going to delete the board anyways. You have Mars who's a double attacking, and then you have Darkworm's like, yeah, I'm also going to clear the board. I'm just going to do it differently. So why have so many of these cards be focused into this when we don't have like that big, I guess to be fair, of a confront payoff where Nova can just be a 2-card combo that heals you and blows up the board for that turn. And of course, you can make the argument for, turn over turn. If they have multiple things that are going to be 10k, well, this can make all your guys like 12k, 13k confronters pretty easily. But again, what does that format look like where we really care about that? That's not like, I guess, if you're playing into white, this can make a lot of sense for the massive BP boost. But even then, it's just such a unfavored matchup for you. I don't think this is going to be the thing that gets you over that hill, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing there is like, hey, it makes our Novas 15Ks. That means we're not trading with enterprises, at least without them like investing a battle trick into it. So like there's that maybe, but not fully in love with that card. However, and it, Star Dragon's kind of doing this thing again. Ancient Dragon's kind of making a return here. One of the big ones is oddly enough, just little Reptoid here. Is one of one of the bigger waves in terms of red. We got Camellia Whip is a 2-cost 1 red reduction Reptoid. On It's a level 1, it's a 3K. On level 3, it's a 5K. On levels 1 and 2, this spirit cannot block. However, on level 2, during your opponent's attack step, if the spirit is exhausted, your opponent's spirits with fewer BP than the spirit cannot reduce your life. So big, it's like big Dragon Arc, right? Dragon Arc protecting you from, is it what, 2Ks, I think?
Yep.
So this one you
Yes.
have to attack, but once that's done, once that all said and done, as long as this thing remains on board, you will not be taking damage. And I think it's kind of nice that it scales with B. I feel like this is the card that was missing in set 1 when all the red defensive cards say like on burst, give this card like 2K or give this card 3. Like this combos really well with Firewall because all of a sudden Firewall is like actually almost just Ice Shield at this point, right? I think it busts by 4K. So it busts up the Camellia Whip to 9K, and now you got like 9K or whatever, right? So like that's pretty real. Like that blocks lots of things that won't be able to do damage to you. So I think this is a really neat card in the regards of like red is getting more defensive toolings. They lean a little bit more aggressive. Like you do need to attack into your opponent to be able to kind of do this. But this has so many cool implications, right? In terms of like, hey, curse actually, like blood curse actually can't hit us right now when we have this on board, right? It blanks a turn now. Not mind you, purple decks don't necessarily have an issue getting rid of an exhausted 2-cost, but it's still there in as far as kind of giving the game more tools to explore how to play the game defensively, which I think will be very welcome for new players, especially who feel like sometimes when they get into the game, like, hey, I just played spirits and turned spirits sideways, and that's kind of how my experience of the game, right? And I think more cards like these lend themselves to a better early new player experience in terms of just having the defensive options to let players go into the late game.
Yeah. Also, might give us some hope for the future to see like a red-white list kind of come together. Again, being one of those popular, I shouldn't say most popular, but a popular combination, all the same we see in Japanese battle spirits, where you have that power of both sides, where it's now like the two enemies are coming together to form a deck, and you have this card in particular, which is going to come down early. It's going to attack pretty easily for 5K, and then you say, okay, well now I have my wall established. I'm not bleeding out, my life, and I can just slowly ramp cores turn after turn.
Very exciting. I actually don't hate the art on this too. It's like very stylized in a way that makes it very enjoyable. It's very it's a lot of red, don't get me wrong, but it's very pleasant to look at. IMO. Moving into purple, I think the biggest excitement for purple here for me is definitely this costume artist. It's a 3-cost, 1 purple reduction Nightling. On levels 1, 2, and 3, when the spirit attacks, you may destroy one of your other spirits to draw a card. And then on levels 2 or 3, it also has Curse. And then level 1, it's a 2K for 1 core. On level 2, it's a 3K for 2 cores. And on level 3, it's a 4K for 4 cores. So stat line's not great, but I do love that as Curse, which makes it viable. I mean, this is mini Nemesis, right? And I think having a repeatable way that your opponent doesn't want to block into to be able to kind of get your destruction abilities off. Again, yellow purple can kind of be great play with a card like this. I think is super great, especially since like you draw a card and then that'll probably proc Swamps, so draws you a card, and then proc Cathedral, which gets you like a core, and then maybe like there's just it lends itself to a lot of great plays that Nemesis wants to do, and you probably do play Nemesis in this style deck anyways, but at least it gets your engine on play much earlier than having to wait the 7 cores it takes to get Nemesis on board, and then the however many cores plus board set up to be able to actually start getting value off of them.
Yeah, much lower to the ground payoff, which is best utilized by the yellow purple deck right now. But again, we might see more things in the near future. And what I didn't realize until I was looking up some games, I think it's from like a Malaysia qualifier. Nightling is actually a major archetype in Japanese battle spirits. Like it just won a tournament, like Nightling's the deck. So this could also be the start of that expansion, like we saw with set 2 that had undead and even more serpent support. We could see this really be in the X rare, once again, not revealed yet. We know it's a Nightling. Maybe it's a Nightling payoff. We might be getting pushed more in that direction with set 3 being like the first hey, let's really focus on these family archetypes and build them up even more.
Yeah, 100%. I'm very excited to see kind of where it goes, especially since this is the kind of play style that excites me the most about purple. I don't get me wrong. I think like Turbo Curse of Maduke is cool. It kind of does its own thing. I think core control with purple is very neat in regards to like how efficient it is and how good it is at combating like the early game and stuff like that. But these kinds of engines where like I'm recurring bodies, I'm getting rid of them, I'm drawing, like it's just value town, right? And I just kind of love that we're really starting to be able to sink into these kind of value centric archetypes and just kind of where that goes. So very excited on that front. In terms of like the purple stuff, for the most part, you kind of just have more curse stuff, more low to the ground stuff on that front. And something I forgot to mention in red, but actually we have in every single color. Eternal Pilgrim is a 3-cost, 1 purple reduction undead. On levels 1, 2, and 3, when destroyed, discard the top 3 cards of your deck, then select an Amethyst Sanctuary from your trash and return it to your hand. And this is very interesting because up so far, every color has had a card that quote unquote search draws for a sanctuary and either puts in your hand or puts into play or something like that. So I think it's very interesting that we're finally seeing them kind of like build together archetypes that have like search draws and consistency and stuff like that. And it almost makes us, and like they talk about it quite heavily in the lore text and everything like that. So it really feels like, I don't know what, but we're leaning into these sanctuaries mattering pretty decently in regards to kind of where we're going to set 3. Mind you, we haven't seen any sanctuaries. We haven't seen any payoffs for these sanctuaries, but every color is getting a card that's looking them up. So what's happening here?
Yeah, you skipped over it. So I was like, oh man, I'm going to let him go through the other colors before I go on my rant. But going back to the comment about the lore, with set 2, we had the Void Lord trailer. It was just like, hey, here's some big dumb idiots. Oh, Tokiwa saved the day. Great. But now with set 3 and with the trailer, like we have our main villain. We see the Star Havoc Rain happening again. We see the sanctuaries get hit. We see the cores power down, right? This is a huge lore tie-in to the trailer now being on the cards. And then, of course, we're going to see the Nexus eventually. And then it even ties into, if you read the lore for the yellow cards, right? If you go to the end of the trailer, you'll notice that purple, yellow, and blue, of course, are like the 3 surviving ones. And yellow has quite a bit of flavor text that says, hey, the Penguins held on to some big secret. Oopsies. Now the Penguins have to go tell everyone how to save the other bloody realms. I'm like, are you serious? These Penguins just causing so much mischief for everybody. And also, oh my God, can we appreciate, if I'm not mistaken, this is also Battle Spirit Saga exclusive artwork in this one and in some of the Bird Folk. So it's like I hate that it's so slow, but it's like One Piece and it's like Digimon, where by set 3, by set 4, we are getting more exclusive artwork. And it just looks so much better. Like, I get it. Yellow is just the aesthetically pleasing color by all their fantasy and fairy tale and cute creatures and stuff like that. But this just looks good. And then also, this card's cracked. Like, the fact that also, like, you read and it has a filter effect, and then it also has Blessed. If the Topaz Sanctuary is good at all, this card is immediately insane, and I cannot wait to see what Topaz Sanctuary does. And hopefully, it's not like just the Void Lords were like, hey, here's some big dumb idiots, whatever. So I got to give a huge shout out to Bandai going from set 2 to set 3, and obviously the lore set as well. We got to give a mini shout out. The team has done great. There's a huge, again, if you care about lore or not, that's its own discussion, but there is a very nice pickup in the attention to lore and tying it all together from the trailer into the lore cards in the actual set, and now having some kind of payoff that might do something. I love it. Absolutely a huge step up, but God, I hope they're playable, or it's just going to be another Void Lord situation after all this build up. So fingers crossed for the sanctuaries.
Yeah, 100% hope. Like, and that's the thing, right? It's like set 2 was the Void Lord set, and it literally was just the 4 big idiots plus Tokiwa, and like that's not true. They got one piece of support in the Mortal 10 card. That's it. Like that. So like it exists, but like it just felt like a half commitment. Here it really feels like they're going into it. Every color has a cycle. All of them are supposedly getting a Nexus. And what do they do? Who knows? But I mean, they're important enough to search for. And I think the yellow one's great. Like the yellow one not only searches for it, it is a repeatable search because it's like every time you crash, like let's say you have a board of 3 or 4 spirits, you are more likely than not finding this card, which is great. The cards go back to the bottom of the deck, which is awesome because up until now, these effects usually throw them into trash, which I like never feels good. And then it plays it for free, which is huge. The fact that like you are getting your reduction back instantly. from the body that you had lost. And in yellow, odds are if you're crashing your bodies in, you're gaining cores, you're drawing cards. Like it leans very well into what yellow wants to do. And I think to that end is like definitely a huge plus up in terms of what it does. And actually, I didn't read out the card, so my apologies to our audio only listeners. Is the Impulsive Pilgrim is a yellow 3-cost 1 yellow reduction Fey Folk. On levels 1, 2, and 3 during your opponent's attack step, reveal the top 2 cards of your deck. When one of your spirits is destroyed by your opponent, place a Topaz Sanctuary from the revealed cards without paying its cost. Return the remaining cards to the bottom of your deck in any order. And then on level 3, she also has Blessed. So I think it's great because like being a Blessed body is so real, right? It's just like you're going to be crashing your other bodies into it. And now your opponent actually has to consider, do I want to block these attacks knowing that if I leave myself wide open, my opponent's also gaining a life? Like I think this card has so much going for it. It has the like downside of being a yellow card, so the stats aren't good. But like at the end of the day, I think that's perfectly fine with what yellow's trying to do anyways. I am very excited for this card. I think in terms of like all the other pilgrims, she is definitely the best one. And it's just kind of like, what are the sanctuaries? That's just what we need to know.
Yeah, it's crazy because this is a big pickup for Luster as well. When you think about it, because it has that blessed body, it allows you to stabilize a little bit better, and it builds in those reductions, what you want from Michaela. You want to have as many reductions or symbols on board to have that big payoff and to have an easier time to dig for those spells. And then, of course, we got a new angel.
Yeah, that we do. We got Judgment Angel Flagellum, a 6-cost, which was really funny. So 6 cost is very relevant because we got Floodstream, right? And me and Cosmic were literally talking the day before. It's like Luster, like because magics are finally getting interesting enough that you can actually consider running Michaela, and it probably at least has some legs. But we were like, yeah, but our only Luster body's Shin, and it's a 5-drop. It just gets flooded. Like, who cares, right? And then like the day after, we got a 6-cost, 2 yellow reduction angel on levels 1, 2, and 3 Luster. And then on levels 2 and 3, during your attack step, when you use a magic card that costs 5 or more, reduce all of your opponent's spirits by 2 KBP during this battle after its effect resolves. This is a massive ability, and you don't even need to be attacking with Angel for this to even proc off. So you can just have her sitting there real nice and pretty on level 2, and then like Exhaust Nexus while swinging with something else, and then, you know, destroy your opponent's board by 5k. Or just like, there's so many lines of play in which this can either destroy bodies, or it can outright just put bodies in range to be able to do a bunch of different things. It's a fantastic card. And its stat lines are actually good. It's a 4k on level 1. It's a 6k on level 2 for 3 cores. And then it's an 8k for 4 cores. I mean, there is so much going right. The only thing you could almost argue is like, maybe she should have like a reduction more or whatever. But like this card's plenty. Like this card does like just enough. I think it's exactly where Luster wants to be. It's like, it's a body that can get you that Luster value and get you that Luster inevitability that also just has some great usage on board if you can't just do Luster things. Like I absolutely adore this card. I think this card is absolutely fantastic when it comes to playing a Luster deck.
Yeah, and again, we always talk about the problem with Luster being is you have to burn those Exhaust Nexus early sometimes to be defensive, and then you can't get enough BP reduction when you need to do your big combo turns. And just having that baked in 2k, like suddenly you're hitting 5ks just off one spell, is going to do a lot of damage. And if at the very least, right, she's going to be able to attack. You have the one Exhaust Nexus, do the effect. And then if you really have to, you can swing with another Luster guy, burn the last Exhaust Nexus. And that's still going to be enough to clear the board, even if you are losing the last one. But hey, play those 1 to 2 of Clavis in the deck, hit the Michaela, get all your Exhaust Nexus back, because why not? So definitely it's finally coming together, as we mentioned, for the top end, but we really got to see some of that, the floor of Luster come together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And at the very least, like in a world where Axe lives on till set 3, now it's a 2-card combo, but one's a spirit that just sits on board, right? Which makes it significantly easier for you to be able to deal with that. One Exhaust Nexus will clear it, and then you kind of just go from there. So I think it's and I do like that there's counterplay as the Axe player, where you guys can just have 2 cores on your Nomengard City, and then it's a 6k, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say like I love blowouts, but I think the fact that now there's real counterplay in terms of how you go into your turn and how you think about your defensive turn going against your yellow opponent is a lot of fun. And I like that this card kind of introduces that. I agree with you. It's still the top end. It still feels like the Luster deck is literally just Michaela plus Flagum, and then like 2 Clavises to get back whatever we need in the late game, right? And then it's just like the rest of the yellow deck's kind of whatever. But I like that it kind of provides that in, especially with going into a flood format. I think it's a great tool in that front. But honestly, yellow in general, I think, has been the most exciting color for this reveal. I think like we got a ton of other lander support. Like we got Pentans, which like obviously as the people of the church, we are very excited for Pentans. Wonderland card Soldier Pentan. is a 3-cost, 3 yellow reductions, making it absolutely free. Other lander. I am a little bit surprised that it's not dual typing with Lorical Bird or whatever the Pentans usually are. I think that's a little bit jarring. But regardless, on levels 1, 2, and 3, when summoned, select an other lander spirit card from your trash and return it to the top of the deck, which is very relevant because, of course, we can combo that with Charles to be able to free play. And now the whole sauce is coming together, right? Like we have the cards that allow us to sequence and play things. And hey, if you don't want to go ahead and straight play it from the top of the deck with Charles, you can go ahead and use Pumpty. I never read this card's name out loud.
Yep.
Wonderland Pumpty Dumpty, which is a 4-cost other lander. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it has the same cost as any spirits, add it to your hand, right? So now we're in a position where we're really going out of our way to synergizing with the top of our deck, getting what we need there. I think this is the consistency piece that was missing to feel like you could play an other lander version of the other lander deck, right? Up until now, we've seen some success of King Charles by like just spamming out 8 drops and just kind of doing the thing, but realistically, that's an axe deck that's just being greedy. Here, I think you can kind of fully commit to the 4, 5, 6 drop. Well, 6. We have a couple of 6 drops. Hopefully, we get a couple of more. But other lander strategy, and I think it's lending itself to being a real deck you can actually play.
Yeah, and we know based on the sequencing that we are going to get a other lander for the X rare in yellow, which most likely is going to be a 6-drop. And what I really like is this feels more like how yellow is supposed to be played out. It's really a color identity that wants to lean into its spirits and cycle themselves over and over, right? Like the reason why Fabled Beast is as good as it is because you have Paradise, and that just naturally draws you cards. But I'm doing a Nexus thing. I'm not doing a let's play with my spirits on board thing, other than just like they have a typing. So I'm really excited because this finally brings us back to yellow and how it should feel to play. And I think there's going to be a lot of like, even if it's not a tier 1 deck, right? By any means, like this is just going to be a super fun deck to play that is also fun to deck build because it always creates a interesting puzzle to figure out, okay, how many 3, 4, 5, or 6 costs am I putting into the deck and what does that look like? Or do I just want to do like a 3 and 5 cost style of deck, right? So this, I think, just opens up a lot more deck building opportunities in yellow that we were really lacking. So fingers crossed, we're going to have a good other lander Nexus and a good other lander X rare, and I think the deck will be playable. So fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I think the one last big highlight, Wonderland Cheshire Cat, a 2-cost 1 yellow reduction, other lander / Fabled Beast, which like, hey, we know we've been talking about how like it'd be nice to transition away from Fabled Beast, but hey, anytime we get a 2-cost Fabled Beast, it's a big plus because that's a lot of synergies cross archetype that allows you to be able to flesh out your bottom. And this one, having the relevant ability down levels 1, 2, and 3, when summoned, reduce the cost of your next yellow magic card you use from your hand this turn by 1. Very relevant ability. Definitely allows you to have more explosive turns for sure. Sets up a reduction, plus you get the core back in effectively the form of a reduction of the cost, which can actually make some of your, depending on the boards you have, can actually cost you to just have like a free Exhaust Nexus or something like that, you know? So it's a very welcome card in terms of like the strategies and what it's trying to do, especially being a 2-drop means that like between Ervada and whatever, there's a world in which you can kind of bring this back, recur this, and do some very cute things in regards to having some really explosive turns with it, especially when you combo it with like saying having a Pentan on board.
Yep, I really like this one in particular because it lines up. One, you don't have to rely on Pentan anymore for the Fabled Beast deck, and it sets you up for your Topaz Radiance to make sure that Hippo is either it's going to kill something or it is healing you, right? Getting Hippo to 6k is super relevant the turn you're able to play this. So I do think that Fabled Beast after this set, you know, we have to see the X-Rare, obligatory disclaimer. It is just going to be a hyper draw deck. Like you can run your Paradise, you can run 4 Topazes. We finally have a 2-drop to play early. We have all the blessed stuff. Like Yellow's going to be drawing a lot of cards, and it's going to be kind of scary. It's set 3.
Yeah, but you know what? If we're in a world where Yellow's tier 1, I'm okay with that world, man. Let's get some change up at the top. I'm so okay with this. And then moving into the white reveals, we got a couple of cute cards. Androids now kind of flesh out as a full archetype. So we've got things like Valkyrie Hilder. So kind of the big sister version of Valkyrie Mist, 5-cost 2 white reductions android on levels 1, 2, and 3. When summoned, select one of your opponent's spirits and return to their hand. So it does not have the restriction of it being a 7-cost or lower. And then additionally, when destroyed by your opponent on level 3, you may select one of your android spirits and refresh it. 2k, a 4k, and a 7k respectively on 1, 3, or 5 cores. I like it. I think I still stand by my notion. I think Valkyrie Mist is better for the type of deck that these kinds of cards play into. But the fact that we now have a Dream Bomb effectively on a body that doesn't have the restrictions of hitting 7 lore, which like with Elephant and with Aegis, Lord knows we know how relevant 8 costs are in this game, right? So I think the fact that that can exist in this world and we have the ability to be able to do that while still applying pressure on a similar cost to Dream Bomb is kind of a welcome part of the equation. I think it's a nice card to include in terms of the toolkit you want to have as white when you're evaluating kind of like how you want to tackle the format.
Yeah, I do appreciate too that they made the level 3 still a consideration. It doesn't have like any relevant payoffs right now, but it's something that could line up in set 4, in set 5, right? So at 5 cores, it's a lot to like play this and to level up fully, but who knows? Might do something interesting in later sets.
Yep. Then we got things like Shield Soldier Balder, which kind of really doubles down on this Android archetype, which before we only had like 2 Android cards, I think, 2 or 3. We had like King Herald, we had Valkyrie Misk and whatnot, but now they're really doubling down on the family. So 2 cost 1 white reduction on levels 1 and 2, armor red purple, and then on 1 and 2, when the spirit blocks, if your opponent used an effect they control to draw a card this turn, select one of your opponent's spirits and return to the hand. A little bit wonky, a little bit weird. Your opponent could definitely play around this if they're seeing it on the board. Especially with like, let's say they have depths on board, the way they sequence the abilities, they can just choose your ability first and things like that. So it's a little bit weird, but at the end of the day, still fine in terms of trying to flesh out what the family wants to do. And then the biggest interesting cards, of course, we also did get the White Pilgrim, so Pilgrim Synthetic Sage. When destroyed by an opponent, you get to view the top 5 cards of your deck, place a Diamond Sanctuary revealed from without paying its cost. So it's nice that this one is free and it does dig deeper than the other ones. But you do have to destroy this card, and white doesn't get recursion as easily. So that's notable on that front. I'd say the 2 biggest cards in terms of like, hey, where's like white every set just gets like a suppression ability. Well, this suppression ability is kind of based off of 2 cards here. So first we'll kick it off with Sheriff Eagle, which I love what they did here. I made this comment on the Discord. They did the Digimon thing where they took an animal, they gave it armor, and gave it a gun.
I love the fact that he just has the gun, man. It's one of the details that you miss, but then you see it, it cracks me up.
Yep, it's just there. So it's a 4 cost 2 white reduction machine beast. On levels 1 and 2, when the spirit blocks during this battle, your spirits and your opponent's spirits cannot be destroyed in battle. So it's like a simultaneous elk effect. So once it's blocked, nothing on board can actually be destroyed. But it's just for that battle. But won't matter much when we see the next card. It also has armor white green. I think white being the most relevant armor, especially since it has that destruction protecting ability tied in. So the big susceptibility here, for the most part, is purple, but it combos really well with, we got another Capybara, kinda. Dive Mech Capybot is a 3 cost 1 right deduction machine beast on levels 1 and 2. When the spirit blocks, select one of your spirits with armor. That spirits may block even if exhausted during this turn, and it itself on level 2 has armor blue. So the idea being that you can block with the eagle or not block with the eagle, kind of doesn't matter really. But whenever you can, you kind of block with the Capybot. You select the eagle or anything. You could actually just do Axe Spider for what it's worth. But assuming that we're trying to stick with the inset cards, you target eagle. Now eagle can block infinitely. It can never be destroyed. Your opponent doesn't lose spirits, but you're basically suppressing. So it's suppression on a stick, assuming you have the right armor bodies, which at the moment are like eagle and axe for the most part. And I think it's neat. I think it's like we're getting to a density of suppression abilities where it kind of doesn't matter. Like just pick your flavor, whichever one you want, and you'll probably see some level of success with it. But this one is repeatable. And also the cute combo is the fact that if you want to keep repeating this ability, assuming both spirits live, you can turn your like battle tricks that don't have a lot of usage in the matchup. Like let's say you have Core Drain and the matchup just doesn't lend itself to Core Drain. You can actually use that to save Capybot when it blocks, and then you'll get another turn of usage on its when the spirit blocks. So I think it's the notion that it's a repeatable potentially suppression effect that's kind of neat. But with that said, for the most part, that's kind of like everything that we've seen thus far. Is there like any specific? I know we got Bird Folk, which like, hey, they're kind of doubling down on that archetype. Is there any like other specific cards that you think are highlights or worth mentioning that I may have forgotten? Kind of we're going through this quick overview of kind of all the cards we've gotten thus far.
No, for sure, definitely hit out on the big ones. The only other thing I'll mention from the White Pilgrim is that it is a reveal 5, which is definitely the deepest that we're going to see. So, like, if we do get to see a Sanctuary that's worth anything, and if the white one in particularly is good, this guy is just going to be able to find it with such consistency. But then I just want to pull this up again because I love his artwork, and obviously, if you're an audio listener, you'll have to go look it up. But Pilgrim Synthetic Sage has got to be my favorite so far of the pilgrims. Like I really do love the white or the yellow aesthetic with the fairy and the flower garden and all that stuff. But this one I think is just like a really cool, like looking out at the desolate land. And then also it plays well into the lore set with their lands being just completely ravaged by the star rain that happened from the realm of water. So it's really curious to see how this will all play out. But again, hopefully sometime soon we're going to see the sanctuaries. But no, I think at least for where we're at right now, that's kind of the big highlights. Definitely a much larger family focus that we've seen so far in set 3 that may or may not matter depending on where the X rares land. But I would not be surprised at all if by set 4 there is going to be a very heavy, family or like archetypal push that we do kind of see come together at the end of the block format.
Yeah, I'm very excited to kind of see what happens there. And I think the biggest thing is the fact that we're pivoting more and more into the notion of getting a better understanding of what families want to do and kind of how, like, it's nice that I can start creating identities around the different components of battle spirits, not only just through color association, but through family association and stuff like that, right? Like there's definitely a strong sense of that in set 1. And then they tried to continue that into set 2. But I think in set 3 is kind of really where we're getting ideas, right? Like we got a couple of Android cards. What are androids doing? I don't really know. Now I have a better idea based on the cards that we're getting now. Okay, this is kind of how this plays along. This is how this kind of comes together to that. So I'm very excited on that front. I think reveals are going to keep on going till who knows how long. We've been getting 12-ish cards every single day. Once we get to the XRs, who knows? Maybe they just give them all of them in one go or not. Well, who knows at that point? But we'll also get the sanctuaries, and actually, it kind of brings up an interesting conversation, or at least kind of a little tidbit we can do. Would you be okay if we got like XR Nexuses or XR Magics, right? Like, are you open to the idea that we use some of those higher rarity slots on things that aren't?
I'm all for it, right? If we go back to the lore set, we did get to see kind of the XR treatment in some magics, and they look gorgeous. And then if we also go back to the test prints, we did see a SPR Nexus test print. So, and the numbers don't work out just yet in that it might be green that has it, but I would not be surprised if one of these colors has their X rare shifted to one of the sanctuaries just because of how much importance has been placed on them. So if we do see it during one of the sets, it might be this one. But as far as I know, and someone I'm sure is going to correct me because I think that Braves also count and those are like are weapons, but they're also still spirits. As far as I know, it's always been spirits, or 99% of the higher rarity stuff has always been spirits. Because at the end of the day, the game is called Battle Spirits, right? That is meant to be the focus. Shocker, I know. But I would really love to see some of that, high rarity foiled treatment on some of the other cards, or at a minimum, let's just kind of get that, nice full art texture as a online participant thing. Give me a, full art cathedral, something like that. I would love to see it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know I'm going to get yelled at till high heavens here, but because people aren't going to like what I'm about to say.
Oh no.
Ice Shield should have been an XR.
Oh, yeah, I think that's fair. That's
nope.
Won't get a complaint from me. Sorry.
Like I understand people are very upset because that was like a $30 card for quite a while. And like what I'm proposing would have made it like a $60, $70 card. But like, hey, local game stores might still be holding on to the set. Like we might actually be moving set 1 product if that was the case, So don't get me wrong, big proponent for accessibility, but I just don't have issues when powerful magics and nexuses kind of roll into being high rarity cards. I think that's fine. But I also come from Magic, and like the lands you need for your deck are rare, right? Like it's like if anyone who plays Magic Arena knows how annoying it is to be able to craft decks because like all your rare wild cards end up going into land. So I can also kind of understand the frustration there for like must have pieces, but we'll see. With that said, very excited to see what's coming. I want to see these sanctuaries. I want to see how they play with like everything, right? Like it feels like it, we've been asking for, and in set 2 we wanted new ways to play the game as opposed to just kind of building blocks on like the same stuff we've been playing for 8 sets. We have searchers, we have a Nexus, assuming how the payoffs work. Maybe we have whole new decks in every single color, which can lend itself to being very interesting. So I'm very excited to kind of see how that all comes together. Of course, if you guys want to be a part of the conversation, then you guys can go ahead and join the unofficial Discord. Link should be down in the description of the video. Or you can go ahead and search us up on any of my Cosmics videos. I believe they're there as well. If you guys want to join, we talk about the reveals every single day, whenever they happen. Whether that's the morning or the evening or late at night, like we'll be around and we'll be talking about it. So you guys definitely want to do that there as well. You guys will want to jump onto the Discord if you guys have any questions or any confessionals that you would like us to talk about on stream. With that said, this has been a bit of a longer episode. Thank you very much, Cosmic, for joining me on another episode. Here's to hoping that John has a great business trip and will be here to join us again next week. And with that said, we will catch you guys on the next episode of the Church of Pentan podcast. May the cores bless your top deck.